G'day guys, today I want to talk to you about creating a test grid or a burn grid for your laser. You're probably a bit like me, very new to it, and you've got your laser all set up, and the first thing you want to do is cut out some really cool little pattern or a comic or a cartoon, or just to see success with your laser, or you want to engrave a picture and you don't know what settings to use. And if you're a little bit like me, you probably started out testing and trialing all these different power grids and power percentages and speeds, and having really mixed successes. And you've probably jumped on the forum and said, "Hey, can someone tell me the best speed or the best power to use for cutting or whatever?" And unfortunately, that's not a universal number. So what I use for my 10-watt laser won't be necessarily what you use for your 10-watt laser, and someone might be able to achieve with a really good 5-watt laser what I can achieve with a 10-watt laser. So you need to know what works for you. And for a long time I saw people using these really cool, really colourful test grids, and they'd say, "Oh, do yourself a test grid," and it's got lots of little boxes and squares, and I looked at that and thought, that looks nuts. How on earth do you make a test grid, and how do they work? Like, how does the laser know to go from one thing to the next? Like, one box would be 10%, the next box would be 20%, and I had no idea. It looks really technical, and it actually isn't. And it's a point now, and I want to show you today, because this will be your best friend once you get going. Test grids are a must, because if you're burning stuff like slate, you need to know which power and which setting to use. Or if you're doing something like a really small little key tag, you want to know what power settings work on that. So everything I do now, I create a test grid. You sacrifice something every time because you have to do a test grid on it, ranging from bottles to slate to timber. Test grids, they are your friend, and once you have one and once you know how to design one, you won't look back. So today I'm going to show you how to design a test grid so that you will be able to do it at home. You'll test everything, and you will then not have to ask the question anymore, which setting works for cutting MDF or whatever. You will know because you'll have created a test grid, and you will know exactly which setting works for giving you the best color shade or pattern or cutting depth. Whatever you want to do, after you've watched this video, for absolute beginners, you will know how to do a test grid. So I'm going to put myself to the background, open up Lightburn, and let's get started. So in Lightburn, and this is working for Lightburn, I'm just making this a bit bigger so we can see. I'm going to start purely by drawing a box. And for me, I make the box 5mm by 5mm. Otherwise it takes too long to burn. You can make it any size you want, but I make my boxes 5mm. So I just went to the box tool over here and grabbed it, drew a box, and now I'm going to change it to say 5 by 5. Nice and easy. And let's make that a bit bigger now on the screen so it's easier to see. There we go. And that's your start for your grid. So I've now got the box sitting here like so, just one box. And I've selected it. I just use the select tool. Sorry, I'm clicking things and I don't want to do that. If you're a beginner, I want you to be able to do this really easily. So I've just drawn the box using the box tool, and then I just deselected out of the box feature, and I'm now drawing. So one box. Now, if you want a grid, you need to decide how many you want your box to be. Do you want it to be 10 boxes this way? Do you want it to be 5 boxes this way? That's going to be the deciding factor. You might decide that you want your box grid to go 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100%. Or you might just decide that you want to go 10, 30, 50. Whatever you do, the little key tag I showed you a second ago, and I'll flick back to here, this little key tag here, and you can't see it real well, but I have that set at 10, 15, 18, 20, 25 and 30%, and speeds of 1,000, 1,500 and 2,000. So you can set it up to be whatever you want. I'm going to just start off by doing, say, a 5, well, let's go We'll go 8, I suppose. Let's go 8. All right. So to do that, it's going to be nice and simple. I don't have to draw box after box after box. I'm just going to go down here to the array tool, the one that's got the 9 dots, which looks like the Google waffle. And I'm going to click the 9 dots, and that brings up my array tool. And I'm just moving it here. I'm having a bit of trouble with my other picture, which is in the way. So I've got my box. Now you can see here it tells me that the box width is 5 millimeters, and the spacing between the boxes, if I go along the x-axis, will be 1 millimeter. I'm going to make it maybe 2. It doesn't need to be huge, maybe 3. There we go. And now I'm going to create 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more boxes, which gives me my 8. Now, we also talked about wanting to go down, so we go to our y-axis and do the same thing. We want spacings here. The y spacing will make it the same as the x, and make it 3 mil here and here. And we'll do the same. Now, you'll see mine's going up, and I don't want it to go up. So I'm going to go down here to reverse direction, and I'm going to tick that box. If you want it to go up, you can leave that as it is. But now when I click this, it'll go down. So I'm going to go, let's keep it really simple and do that. So what do I do? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 by 8. 7 by 8. Nice and easy. And that is the start of my grid. Now, what we need to do is assign each one of these rows to a different layer. So each one of these has to be a different layer, and this is where you see all the pretty colours come in. So my first row, I'm going to change the colour, and you'll see why in a second. I just highlighted, so I left clicked and dragged across and highlighted that whole row, and I'm going to assign it blue on the cuts layer over here. Going to do the same through here. Select this row, assign it red, and you'll see now the pretty pattern of colours that you see on people's cuts is the same. So this is where all your colours. I'm not going to choose the poo green colour because I find that really hard to see. So I'm going to 5, going to 6, and 7, and 8. Whoa. Z, go backwards, and select this one as well, and go 9. All right. So there you can see, you're starting to see these pretty test grids. And if you're not sure how I just did that, I was literally selecting them, so they're all highlighted, and you've got the little dancing ants going around the edge, and then literally clicking on the layer box that I wanted them to be below. It's not full size, my screen. Clicking on the layer box that you want them to be, and that changes them to the colour they are. Now, over in my cuts window, just moving this to make it a bit bigger, you can see that I now have all of these layers. And you might be wondering at this point, well, that's fine, but they're all set to all different power speeds and all different things. And that's correct, they are. So let's not get too stressed about that just yet. We've created our grid of lots of different colours. Like I said with the little pendant that I showed you a second ago, you could make this just a 4x4 grid. You could make it a 3x4. Once you understand the process of this, you can make these grids any size you want, but this is the process you need to follow to set up your own test grid. Okay, so what we want now is to decide what our percentage or our power percentage is going to be. So I just went over here and clicked the text tool, which I'm going to assign to the black layer, or the 0, 0, and up here I'm just going to go 10. Oh, it's too big. We'll fix that in a second. And click back in here again. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, I think. Now I'm going to select out of here so that it highlights the text and drag it across here. And I'm just going to resize it by shrinking and dragging it over my boxes. I don't want this to be big. It doesn't have to be the feature of the text of the project. And drag it out a bit more. And now you can see roughly, might make it a bit smaller. That'll do. You can see up here they're only little, they're only 2 mil high anyway, so it might look massive here, but they're only 2 millimeters high. And you can see they're roughly lined up with the grid. If you're a little bit OCD and you want them perfect, click back into the text and you can just click in there and do a space to sort of change things out a little bit. And then just do another click and drag on the text. There you go. And that's mucked things up completely, so I'll just go back again. And so it's just a tinker. You can get it as right as you want. But for now, it's not completely right. That's actually annoying me. My OCD is playing up. There we go. So leave it alone. It's better as it was. There we go. So now these are the power percentages we're going to have, and up above I'm just going to type in power percentage. That's way too big again. Oops, too small. And I'm going to actually type my laser. So for me it's and I do this on all my burn grids. You probably saw I just have which laser module I've used because I've got 2 different modules. So I'll just go M100. And go M100, there we go. And I'm just going to center that over top, power percentage M100. And down the side here, we want to know what speed we're going to use. So I'm going to type in, and you can type in anything you want. Your laser might be capable of doing super speeds or really slow speeds. So this is just the example. You set it to what you want it to be and what you want to test. So I'm going to say maybe 500. Actually, that was a mistake. I need to drag that higher. Actually, I'll delete that altogether. I'm going to start at the top, and the reason is that then I can just space down. So if I go 4,000, 3,000, 2,000, 1,800, 1,500, 1,200. Once again, your settings, you do whatever you want to do here. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I've got 6, so I'll do one more, and then I'll go 1,000. 1,000. And now I'm just going to line those up here and make sure they line up with my boxes. And they do, pretty much. So that's good. So also I want to know, whoops, just making that a little bit smaller. It's a bit chunky and massive. There we go. So now I also just want to do a text up the side that says speed. And I'm just going to go speed, min. Going to select it. And using the shortcut of the full stop on the keyboard, I'm going to rotate it. I was very happy when I found out I didn't have to keep clicking at the top. So the full stop down on the keyboard rotates, in case you didn't know. And there, in essence, I have my test grid ready to have the power stuff put on it. So this is the pretty little thing. Some people would then go to the extent of drawing a nice little box around it, which makes it look wonderful. I'm going to do that last. So now what you need to do is set your percentages for each one of these so that when you are burning, they change. Because the last thing you want is these to all be burning at 80% or 100%. You're just going to do whatever. So this one, to be clear, this grid we're doing right here is going to test your cutting power. So your ability to cut through a certain timber. It's not filling, it's just going to do a line cut. So the next step is highlight. Oh, no, that's wrong. I've still got boxes selected. Go up here to your select and then highlight this whole column like so. And you can see the whole column is dancing, and what we want is 80% power. So we go over to Shape Properties over here and we click Shape Properties, and you can see it says Power Scale 100. Well, we want 80. Alright, so that's cool. We'll click out of here. So now every one of these shapes is set to burn at 80% power. We go again, same thing here, whoops, there, we select this column, go to shape properties over here, and if you don't have shape properties, just go to your window and it should be a, there it is, make sure shape properties is ticked and that'll appear then over in your console. So if you're missing shape properties, that's where you'll find it. Tick this box and it'll appear off to the side. So then we go to shape properties for that one and we set it for 70. I think you get the idea now. We keep doing this all the way along and we set it for 60, 60, all the way down through. So I'll keep doing this, you follow along, creating your grid, highlighting each row, each column as you go, setting it to the power that it is on. Oh, there we go. Here we go. That it is listed above, so 30. Whoops, that's not right. 30, that's not right either. That's going to do my heading. 30. There we go. And then we go to this column at 20 and set the next column at 10. Perfect. All right. So that is not it, but it is close to it. So now there's something else we need to check out. First off, we need to make sure that all of these rows are set to the speed that we say they're set to. So you can see here I've got the blue row, which is row 1, and I scroll to the top of my cuts layer, and I go 01, and it's set to fill. So I need to make sure it's set to line, and I need to change this. I need to change the speed to be 4,000. And I need to make sure the power max here is 100. And you might be going, hang on a minute, that doesn't make any sense. But what that, if I don't change this setting right here on every layer to make sure the power here is 100, it might be set. For example, the blue layer might be set to 20. For example, just as an example, say my line 1 is set at 20. What that means is it'll get to here, it'll cut at 10% power, it'll go to here, it'll cut to 20% power, and even though it is set, this box, the shape property, if I click on it, as you'll see, if I click on this box and I go to shape properties, you'll see this box is set to 30% power. In my cuts layer, because it is set to 20% power maximum, I will never get any higher than a 20% cut. So I need to make sure, even though it seems strange, you set it to 100, but the property of this box is actually 30. The property of this box will be 40, 50, 60, 70, and so on. If I don't change my maximum to 100, whatever this is set to will be the maximum power that this row reaches. So don't make the mistake of thinking the power on this row has to be the maximum of 10 or whatever. Set every one of them to 100 because each shape has its own setting, which is what we did to start off with. Alright, so now we go to the red layer. You can see that this is set to fill as well. We change it to line, it'll have to be line, and you can see that the speed we want for the red layer is 3000, which we're doing. And it's set to maximum of 100%. Perfect. And you keep going through. We want them all at line. Change the speed to 2000. And make sure, as you can see here, if I didn't do this on this change, you would never get above 20% power, so my grid would not work. Make sure it's changed, and then I go to the orange layer, set it to 1800. Go to, and it's at 100% power, which is good. It's set to fill. We need to make sure it's set to line. The next one, which is the 1500, make sure it's set at 1500, and it is. The next one needs to be set at 1200. 1200. and the one after that needs to be set at 1000 from memory. So now we have them all set at the right thing. They're all set over here in the cuts layer at 100% power. We've set our shape properties according to what we want them to do, and every one of them is set to line, as you can see. And then I don't want that to be a fill, I want that to be a line as well, because that's my text. I don't need my text to be filling, it's going to take forever. So need to make sure that I set my text at something that will be readable but not overpowering. So I've got mine set at 1000 millimeters a minute and 30% power, which is going to work fine for my module. I could then draw a nice little box around it, so it looks very cool and groovy. And you would see then that if I go to my preview, it's going to take a total of 2 minutes time to do. Not a great deal of time, and because it's purely a cut, it's not an engrave. And that is how you create a test cut grid. So that's your test cut grid. Now to do this exact same thing with a power, with an engrave, you would just change these layers to engrave or to fill. And then, depending on, if I change this to fill, you'll see something that also changes. It gives me the, no, it doesn't give me the option. No, it didn't. Fill. Right. So it doesn't give me the option. I thought it would then give me the option of changing my intervals, but it didn't. Yes, it does. There we go. So if I change the intervals, that's where, for me, for engraving, I use mine at 0.050. Gives me a much nicer go, but you need to be aware that the finer your intervals, the more likely you are to cut on high power. So, bottom line is, you have now created a cut grid, and I could then go, and I'm going to get rid of this box because it's in the way. I could then go and do the very same. I just highlighted that, select, highlight, and now I'm going to go Command C, I'm on a Mac, Control C on a PC, Control C, then I'm going to go over here and click and go Control V, and paste, and I'm just going to move things to the side a bit, and you can see now I've got a duplicate off to the side. Now you don't often need a massive engraved grid, but you might want to. So you would change this to power 100%, speed millimeters a minute, and I'm going to change the text by clicking on text to say engrave. Actually, what I've done doesn't work, to be honest. It does, but it doesn't. So now, if I don't change anything, what I'm going to do is end up with two cutting grids. So I actually need to assign these, highlighting, select all the blue ones, and I need to assign them to an unused layer, 10. You'll see why in a second. Assign them, keep going, 11. Oops, 12. So if you want to do an engraved grid, same thing, keep going, 13. Assign them to a new layer, because if I don't, I'm just going to have two cut grids. 14, 14. Like I said, this grid can be as big or as little as you want it to be. Magpie's warbling in the background. There we go. Alright, now, you can see now on my cuts layer I have a ton of layers. So layers 0 to this one here, nope, this one here, 0 to 9 are my cut. The ones above that are my engraved. So layer 10, I want to set layer 10, there we go, to fill, and I want to leave the speed at 4000. because that's what it is. So layer 10, the speed is 4,000, and the shape properties are already going to be there. I don't need to change them. So set it at 4,000, and by shape properties, if you've forgotten, if I click on this box, it should go, and you can see that it's set at 80% power. So they'll all have the same properties that they had in this one. I'm just now changing them from being a line cut or a line engrave to a fill engrave. So this one here, we need to set it at 4,000, and we need to make sure the power is 100% so we can still achieve that maximum power. And go all the way through. Like I said, remember, if you're using this and you want your line intervals to change, that's set at 1 or 0.1 of a mil increments. It's probably going to be fine, but if you want a finer increment, you would change it to 0.0 something or whatever. You can experiment with that. You would then go through to your next layer and go change that to a fill, and the next one is 3,000. 3,000. Make sure it's at 100%, and keep going through. And once you've done that, you will go through this whole thing, and if you look here on our preview, you'll see that this is now changing these. These are a cut, and these are going to be an engrave of a different proportion. And I would keep going through to all these are black. So this one will be a cut grid, this one will be an engraved grid, which will give me my shading. And once I've done that, my shading will be what I'll then be able to use to engrave on things like stainless steel, if you can do that. Different timbers, you can use that. I would keep going through and go to the light blue green one, change that to 2,000. Still at 100% power, make sure it's on fill. Change the next one to the 1800. 1800. And make sure it's on fill, not line. Change the next one to the 1500. Fill, not line. Change the next one to be 1200. Make sure it's at 100%. And on fill, not line. And then the next one is 1,000 millimeters a minute. And make sure it's on fill, not line. And when I go to my preview for cut, you'll now see this is different, and I'm going to have a look at that in a second and just check my powers. Yep, they're all okay. So this is basically telling me what it's going to look like. I'm just going to double check some stuff, because there's my line interval and there's the reason for my difference on that one. If I looked at the preview, you can see that this one here has a really light sketchy line. So I'm going to change this interval to 0.1 like all the others. 0.1. Always pays to do a last minute check, and you can see now. There we go. So I'm going to go through and just double check all my line intervals. There's okay, that's 0.3, 0.1. There's my line intervals, there's my line intervals. Alright, so you can see now all my line intervals are set at 0.1, and therefore my shadings on these should all look the same. It will vary when I cut, obviously, on the timber, because the power rating for each one of these grids is ranging from 10% to 80% power. You can go right up to 100% if you want. You can set it to whatever, but it's going to take 14 minutes to complete the task, and it's not very big in total. And that, in essence is, here's me, here we go. That, in essence, is how to do your power grid. So once you've done that, once you've learned how to do a power grid, you'll be able to do everything you want. Oh, here we go. There. Everything over and over. Power grids on everything you want, ranging from bottles to timber to anything. I 100% power grid everything I do, so that now I don't have to get on the forum and go, can someone tell me what is the best setting for this? Once you've done your own power grid and you've got your head around this, you'll be able to go, all right, this is easy. And it is. It just looks like it's seriously complex, but it's not. you can then go and design this. Like I literally sat there and went, oh, I don't know what new setting I need to use for this key tag because my module's new. So I literally created a really small little test grid for this one. It's got the settings and stuff on it. And now I know, and I'm creating all sorts of really cool things with key tags as well. I hope this helps you as a newbie. If there's something that I missed or I went too fast on something, send me a message and I will do my best to answer the question. I am new like the people who are watching this, no doubt. So hopefully as a new person who's learnt it to a new person who's trying to learn it, that made sense. So enjoy and go and create your power grids and cut some stuff without needing to ask anymore what setting is the best setting.